Hi there. So the reason why I'm making this video is because this is on Franck's Prelude, Chorale, and Fugue, one of my favorite piano pieces. But I think, I could be wrong on this, but I suspect that it's one of the less accessible piano pieces. And what I mean by that is that it's long, it's dark, and it's got very interesting harmonies and then not a super catchy melody. Additionally, it certainly doesn't help that Franck isn't the most well-known composer. So with that said, I wanted to make this as a kind of a brief guide to why this piece is so special. Besides it just being really neat and pretty, there's a really deep and fascinating inner logic to what's going on. Because the title says Prelude, Chorale, and Fugue, and that actually sounds like, oh, it's three separate pieces. On the contrary, even though they're three separate types of pieces, a prelude, a chorale, and a fugue, in this case, they're distinct, but all the same. Now, how is that possible? Well, that's what I hope to show you, in that it's actually a single piece of music with different pieces of music in it. It's scholars will call this a double function. And that's referring to the fact that you have a prelude, and the prelude is functioning as like a normal prelude that you would have in from Bach, for example. But it's also functioning as kind of the first part of the piece, and it's introducing the thematic material that's going to make up, particularly the fugue. One way to kind of think about this piece is that the material that shows up in the prelude and the material that shows up in the chorale is then combined together in the fugue and / the finale, because in the fugue then transitions to the finale. It's kind of all the same. The fugue is the finale, right? But it transitions to the more finale section, where actually all of these pieces fully come together. But in order for that to happen, those pieces need to be explained, because they can be a little bit harder to hear, particularly because you don't have the help of like an orchestra where you can listen out for that clarinet melody that shows up each time. In this case, you don't have that. You just have the piano. So you have to really pay attention, and it's really easy, I think, to miss this the first time listening to it. I know I did, and so hence why I'm making the video. So the prelude starts out with a really odd texture. So the melody is... But it's all dressed up with a very odd kind of texture, because your melody is... So the texture is weird because normally you're not playing in the same hand both above and below the melody. But this is kind of roughly what it sounds like. Ignore my messiness. I haven't practiced this piece in a little while. Anyways, so that's kind of the main idea, as it were, of the prelude, because that texture is really distinct of this. But it does fit with actually what historically preludes tend to be. Listen to a prelude by Bach. I can't remember how that exactly goes. I should know this, but the prelude in C major, it goes kind of like that. I don't know if that made any sense. Anyways, so that's kind of the main idea of the prelude, except the prelude also introduces the main idea of the piece. So after this kind of, really kind of harpy texture almost dissipates, it introduces kind of the main idea. So we then have... the main idea. Or one of the main ideas, excuse me. I'm getting ahead of myself. The main idea is coming up after this one. But we have this really somber kind of passage. quite dramatic, really dark, very rich harmonies. It's just so much fun to play that part. Very chromatic. Yeah. And then it goes off to a really nice. I'm not going through the entire piece and guiding you, but you can do that on your own. I'm picking out the important parts that you should listen out for, and as opposed to me writing it down, which is hard to be like, oh yeah, on measure 33, this is that thing. You don't have the sheet music. You're not going to get the sheet music, and even if you did look at it, you might not know what on earth you're looking at. So it's way better to just point it out this way. So Prelude goes on. It's nice. And then it kind of dissipates, and then it transitions to the chorale. And it's kind of very, very sneaky transition. So we have something like that. Oops. Listen to this F sharp's held over. Organ-like textures, awesome harmonies. There we go. Nice resolution there. Anyways, that's that part's not that's the main part of the chorale, but that's not what's important about the chorale for the rest of the piece. Instead, so since we have earlier here that I just kind of mentioned this, highlighted, is this. So if that's what our main idea, the second most important idea is presented here in the chorale. And it's an awesome chord progression, a wonderful chord progression. And it's also, the odd textures of the prelude, there's also some interesting piano textures here because it's meant to emulate an organ. And you hear that because of, the very low bass notes and the kind of spread sound that you have. But it's all with a really slow kind of rhythm because it's a chorale. It's supposed to emulate an organ, and Franck was an excellent organ player. His organ chorales are really good too, by the way. But this chord progression is lovely. Because I messed it up. Let me try again. So that chord progression with this melody on top, that's the second most important idea. And in the chorale, it's featured each time louder and in a different key. And so we start out, but following the same chords, as it were, the same functions. Each chord is in the same place in the different. Is in the same relative place in the respective key. Because the next time you hear it, it sounds like. And then you hear it after that in a new key. This time it's. That's the chorale. Now, the chorale ends. There's still lovely things that happen in the chorale, but now we have this kind of interesting transition section between the fugue and the chorale. And guess what starts out this section? If you've been paying attention, you'd recognize that is the same kind of the same motive that we have from earlier here when we have so it's the same, oops, but it's a little bit different in that now there's some repetition with that note involved, but it's I think it's the exact same kind of, well, it has the same structure, has the same stuff going on harmonically and rhythmically. And that's kind of a foreshadowing of the fugue theme, which then comes after this transition. But then guess what you have to start it? Something that sounds very much like that early part that we have in the chorale, and it goes like, and then this spins out to the fugue theme. Second subject. So the fugue theme comes from that part that I played earlier on, even from this, which then, of course, turns into, oops. Excuse me. That turns into this fugue theme. So there's a really, really tight connection, and that fugue theme is developed and changed and transformed, and then we get statements that are really loud and proud, like this one. The idea that fugue theme keeps being changed and developed. So then we have like here, and if you want to know more about fugues, like when I said earlier, like second subject enters, that's or second voice rather, I think it's more technically appropriate. That's a whole other subject about like what fugues do, how they're supposed to work, and so on. But just know that this is at least, you know, it's a fugue for the most part. And so then you can get things like, and this is just a normal little tricky technique. So here's a nice let's say this is where the theme is backwards, I believe, and upside down. It's an inversion. No, sorry, it's not backwards, it's just an inversion. So instead of going, it's going to go up now. You get the idea. But, you know, that's just normal fugal kind of tinkering that you do. And then the fugue reaches a climax with that theme that, again, comes back from the very beginning. And I'm not going to play the climax because I'm going to butcher it, and it's tricky and sounds really, really good. But you go from that climax of the statement of the fugue theme, real nasty, really, really crazy harmonies. Oh, that reminds me, one of the other fun things I love about this piece, I know I'm getting distracted away from the main point of why I'm making this video, but it's at least nice to point out some really cool things that go on with the harmony here. Where is that passage? Because Franck, late Romantic, lots of chromaticism, lots of interesting chords. So there's a really jazzy chord that happens in here where it's part of the oh yeah, I messed it up. Really neat harmony. Looking forward. So, finish the climax of the fugue, and let me play the last few bars to get to the transitions. The transition is important for the whole point about why actually this piece is so amazing. just spills over the top of the climax, which would sound more dramatic if I played the whole thing. Anyways, so you now have this rippling 16th note texture, and here is where the brilliance comes in. So you have something going on like this. So I'm not playing this very well. Sorry, I haven't practiced in a little while. But did you notice what happened? We have the chorale theme. But it's combined with the texture of the prelude. Goes on, and that's going to build to a climax. And this other climax is the high point, or one of the major high points of the piece, because not only does this chorale theme and that kind of harp, like glissando texture keep going and expanding and changing, it adds something. So let me kind of show you how, as it balloons out. So now we end up with something like, butchering that, the fugue theme comes back. And you remember the fugue theme is what originates from the early thing that happens in the prelude. So in a way, the very first 2 pages of the prelude, minus the main theme from the chorale, it shows back up here. It is now combined together into this crazy awesome passage. So the fugue theme, just so that we're clear, so we have up in the upper register, we have the, now we have in the, sorry, this isn't the correct key. So that's, chorale theme, but then we have it with the texture. Of that, we now have so that's the brilliance. And then just to make it even better, so that kind of spins out, there's repetition in a new key. To make it even better, Franck didn't stop there. There's actually one last statement of the chorale theme with the textures from the prelude, and that comes at the very, very end of the piece. And here's the best part. So the piece starts out, really dark. Remember the kind of really somber melody. So the piece ends in B major. Most of it had been in B minor, or chunks of it, and now it ends in B major. So like the statement here that first starts the return of the chorale here that's in B minor. The very last statement of the piece, it's now. So that's the chorale in B major. You can hear it very clearly in the left hand. That's the left hand now in B major. And so it's brilliant, brilliant passage. Sounds sort of something like. So, when you get some spare time, listen to Franck's Prelude, Chorale, and Fugue, and really think about some of these things that I've talked about, as it makes the entire experience so much more worthwhile. And it's really quite amazing how the piece is crafted together. This kind of both like narrative satisfaction that we get from the move from this kind of dark beginning to a more triumphant ending, through some kinds of struggles, some neat little harmonies that go on that sound really cool. And but I think more importantly, this really awesome thematic transformation and combining of these really unexpected elements that you wouldn't pick to be to fit together so nicely as they do. So this is thanks for watching.